First You Think is a not-for-profit ministry of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Support us at ucdsm.org today.
It didn't take me long to miss the Midwest. I honestly thought it would take a few years. Spending the first 20-something years of my life in Chicago, one gets tired of the harsh seasons, the too hot summer, the too cold winter, the radically changing fall and spring. So when we moved out to Los Angeles, I thought, finally, 80 and sunny ad infinitum. And then fall came and it was 80 and sunny. And then winter came and it was 70 and sunny. And I realized at some point that we missed the taste of fresh apples at the farmer's market on a cold October morning, the shock of green that is a Midwestern spring. So we said, well, what can we do with what we have? And we had this tiny apartment with a tinier plot of dirt. We thought, let's bring the Midwest to us. And so we amended that compacted soil with some fresh topsoil, mapped out a square-foot garden, and planted beans, broccoli, tomatoes, corn. And wouldn't you know it, with 80 degrees and constant sun and a little help from the garden hose, we pretty quickly had a lush plot of land there. We just didn't have any vegetables. I can see you gardeners getting ahead of me. Well, I didn't know. There's probably a dozen reasons why it didn't work. I think they probably needed these long weeks of soaking rains and not a little bit of a garden hose. They probably needed soil that drains and not compacted LA soil. The corn needed other corn to pollinate with. I think you are getting the picture. Not every plant thrives everywhere. A few years later, we were living in the gentle green hills of Appalachia with a big, lush lawn in the backyard of the faculty housing. We'd been burned on the idea of vegetable gardening, so we said, let's try chickens. We got a coop, we got a fence, we got hatchlings, we got the whole deal. And soon we were watching 6 hens make the best deal we've ever gotten. They ate all the bugs, and they gave us eggs. They are the best pet you can ever have. Now, we gave the chickens plenty of feed, but they were also very happy to eat all of the grass in that big, lush lawn. And before we recognized it, our backyard was a field of mud. And then just as quickly, our backyard was a field of weeds. Yeah, we didn't care too much about the lawn, though it turns out the facilities department renting the house did. But we didn't want a yard full of weeds either. We learned in that moment that if you remove the lawn, something else is very happy to grow in its place. I guess as I'm hearing this, I'm realizing that my wife and I might be terrible gardeners. Which is a shame, because it's here I should tell you that her mother and my father are both award-winning gardeners. They both have the sort of yards that are regularly selected for like the city garden walk. I feel like if Mozart had a tone-deaf son going, sorry, Dad, I guess it skipped a generation. To put it simply, since moving to Des Moines, I've killed our lawn by mowing it. This June, we are exploring this practice of what it means to flourish together. And when the celebrant team got together to talk about what this means, their minds went to gardens and nature, to that beneficial exchange of resources that makes up the thriving garden, the interplay of soil and water and light and nutrients and seeds, that the word flourish itself is from the Latin to flower. Let's do it this way. Picture a garden in your mind that's fine. Now picture a garden that is flourishing. Do you see it? The overflowing, colorful, teeming with life nature of a flourishing garden? It's easy to grow something. It's hard to grow something where it all flourishes together. Now, the best gardens rely on the interplay of resources, on the idea that flourishing happens together. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes famously about the cooperation of the 3 sisters, squash, beans, and corn, when they are planted diligently together. The corn grows first, tall and straight. That provides the natural trellis for the beans, and as they climb up the corn, they are also fixing the nitrogen in the soil. The squash takes its time, covering the ground, shading the soil, and keeping the pests out. This form of flourishing together, when you look at the actual crop output, outperforms our monoculture approach of 40 acres of corn in rows, 40 acres of beans, 40 acres of squash. Because these plants need one another and work with one another's gifts better together than they do apart. When we moved to Los Angeles, the first job I got was singing as a tenor soloist in a Catholic church. I should mention that I had left Catholicism halfway through confirmation class as a 14-year-old. But since I was there singing for every Mass, every Sunday, I thought, let's try it again. Let's come back to the tradition. And I did try. I did. But it occurred to me it was no longer the right climate for me. It didn't feel like the right soil there. I didn't have the nutrients I needed for my spiritual and ethical growth at that point in my life. I felt, well, like the corn in my backyard in LA. All form, no fruit. I had nothing in the ecosystem to support what I needed, but I should also say there was nothing in that system to take advantage of what I was bringing. Questions. Have you felt like a corn stalk in LA? Like, this should be working. Other plants clearly like this, but I'm getting the sense this is not my garden. I don't see any other corn here to pollinate my ideas with. Maybe I am in the wrong soil. It's easy to grow something. It's hard to grow something that flourishes together. When we moved to Appalachia, at that point in my late 20s, I was now firmly no religious identity, no spiritual or ethical community, thank you. I'd carefully dissected all of the problems with every organized religion and was happy to explain how stupid they were, just like the chickens had cleared away all of the lawn in my backyard. And in my nihilism, the ethical and spiritual garden I had was mud. But what grows in place of that kind of a community? The weeds indigenous to my mind. Anxiety, rumination, despair, a pattern of hyperfunctioning, overwork, and burnout. Those are the weeds that are delighted to grow in my head. And I wonder, when you strip away whatever beneficial ground cover your mind has, what weeds are indigenous to you? What loves to cover the soil of your mind and heart, depleted of its nutrients, crowd out the beneficial plants? Because it's very easy to grow weeds. It's a lot harder to grow something that flourishes together. Actually, it's just hard to do things together. Other people are hard. That's the wise sentence I offer you today. People are different than you, and they say things differently, and they do things differently. They're bossy or lazy or whatever it is that other people are. But working with other people is also scary, and it's vulnerable. When you choose to plant yourself in a new garden, like a church or a community choir or a new workplace, let's be honest, it's scary, it's hard. The soil might be the wrong pH. We might not get the kind of water we need. What if there's aphids? What if somebody salted this patch of earth? I think we've all worked in that job once. We need one another to truly flourish, yes. But in needing one another, we have to say something out loud that's really terrifying. Oh my God, we need one another. We live in a culture that glorifies self-reliance. Just Google it. It's a kind of cult, especially for men. And it feels weak to say out loud that we need one another, like we're somehow deficient if we cannot flourish on our own. If we can't be the Sigma male. I blame it on something much earlier than our current Sigma male obsession. Did you ever have to read Henry David Thoreau's Walden Pond? Yeah, there we go. Here's a quote. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, the birthplace of the American mythos of a man, his cabin, his axe. That's all you need. Thoreau, who says, "I find it wholesome to be alone the greater part of the time. To be in company, even with the best, is soon wearisome and dissipating. I love to be alone." That Thoreau living alone in his cabin, yeah, Thoreau's mom did his laundry and brought him groceries. You saw it coming. Thoreau, we need one another. And when we take that risk, when we let go of this cult of independence, when we actually acknowledge the reality of our interdependence, then we crash into the risk of being vulnerable. What if I'm not enough for you? What if my plant is the wrong shape or color or bears the wrong fruit? And what if this garden hurts me? Because we've all been hurt by gardens. Brene Brown writes a lot about vulnerability and the bravery to get through it. She says, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. Let's parse that. When she says it's the birthplace of love and belonging, she means that if you want to experience love and belonging and joy, then you need to embrace the vulnerability of being in the garden with others. And when she says it is the source of things, she means that when we embrace vulnerability, we will yield the fruits of hope and empathy and accountability and authenticity. The beans have to trust that the corn will hold steady and support them. The corn has to trust that the squash is going to cover the ground and keep out the pests. And the corn and the squash have to trust that the beans are going to fix the soil. It's easy to grow something. It's just harder to flourish together. But that's not even the trickiest part. The trickiest part is, how does the garden hold itself together without becoming a wild thicket? How do you grow a garden that flourishes without getting overrun? Because you can get a clean, uniform garden with rows and rows of corn, but that's not what we mean by flourishing. As I have proven maybe too many times in my attempts at gardening, doing nothing to support the work of the garden just means that you have a backyard of buckthorn. The celebrant team was actually very interested in that question. In a pluralist community like ours, how do we find a common direction? How do we row in the same direction? How do we unify? So I asked them, well, what examples in your lives do you have of flourishing in community? They brought up experiences like a good committee that has its clear goals and purposes and everyone does their part well and in synergy with others. Those exist. They talked about events where there's a huge success because each part of the event was beautifully done. The coherence and excellence of each part made the whole experience amazing. When you zoom out, church is a much, much bigger garden than any one team or any other community or committee. And yet, when you think about your lived experience in the garden of a church, it shows up in the smaller gardens, the experience of being on a team or a committee. It's ringing with the bell choir, knowing that I have F and G, but I'm going to trust that you have E and D. It shows up in your work with the AV booth, in the folks you wash dishes with in the hospitality team, or the folks you bring meals to the shelter with in food ministry. It's the folks you get real with in Soul Matters. Perhaps church is a botanical garden, a collection of gardens that each have their clarity and agreement about how they want to grow. Because, and 20-something Steve, please pay attention, gardens do require tending. You have to address the buckthorn before it becomes a garden of buckthorn. You have to water some plants more than others. You have to move some plants around until they find their happier place. You do need to continually amend the soil. You have to trim the dead leaves. I was lying to myself. I was saying, I'm going to trust the innate wisdom of nature, bro. Yeah, that just meant I was too lazy to garden. And for this, I want to celebrate the ongoing work of our leadership support team. This year, they've been working to guide groups in how to build clear, simple, loving charters and covenants, because clarity is a gift, and as Brene Brown also says, clear is kind. Here's what our team does. Here's some things it doesn't do. Here's how we rotate our leadership. Here's how we hold ourselves accountable. Because when you grow in a flourishing garden, you can trust that the gifts you bring are welcome. And you can also trust that completely different gifts are also needed for the garden's overall health. A flourishing church needs dreamers, yes. But it's also nice to have a few brass tacks planners, right? We need energetic cheerleaders, but we also need contemplative meditators. We need all generations, the dynamic exchange of resources that helps the garden flourish. As we come to celebrate our church year together, as we come to the holy work of democracy in action that we call annual meeting, as we come to the harvest of our shared ministry in this year, let's say the thing that is so big and so heavy and perhaps so obvious to some longer time members that it's easy to forget to say. This congregation's been through a lot in the last 9 years. When I hear stories, I imagine it felt some days like the whole garden was on fire, that people were hurt, and in our efforts to help, people were hurting one another. Gardens are known to thrive after a fire. Sometimes the fire clears out decades of that famous sentence that kills churches. That's the way we do things. Now, look around. Look at how verdant, how abundant, how flourishing we are becoming. Our resilience. In a short while, the members here will gather to discuss and approve important measures for the year to come. For me, as a UU, a good annual meeting, it's the epitome of a flourishing garden. It's the whole sermon right there. Because we gather with different lives and experiences and perspectives like different plants. We have our lively conversation and interplay of resources about what choices we shall make together. And then we commit. The budget, for example, is an ongoing, year-long conversation. It's a conversation with every team and committee. What do you need in the year to come to do your work? It's a conversation with the minister and the administrator. It's a conversation with the board. And just as much a conversation with everyone around pledges. What can we give? And then we say, okay, based on what we think we have, the resources we have, this is what we think we can grow in the year to come. Now, if we have a massed year and we get more resources, then we can support these other aspirational projects as well. That's a year-long ongoing journey. Meanwhile, we're looking at all the policies and the issues that have been worked on over the year in our teams, committees, meetings, discussions, and we say, shall we adopt these? It is such a radically democratic process. UU congregations remain one of the few spaces where decisions are still made from this deliberate process of iterative, ongoing, back and forth conversations among all of the constituents. Are there simpler ways to run a church? Yes, every other way. Most churches run a top-down model. I say do this. You can get a lot of corn in 40 rows of it, 40 acres of rows. It's just not flourishing. So, here's to the work that we all do, each in our own beloved way. To each of you, the contemplative willow, the exuberant bird of paradise. Where are you? I'll find you eventually. Now you're wondering if that's you. To the corn, beans, and squash that work together, to the earthworms and honeybees, to the moss and lichen, to the oak and birch. Thank you. Thank you for the essential work you do and our commitment to flourish together. The question we live with, what kind of garden shall we build together? And that makes me think of the song, let us build a land where we can love radically, where we will create peace, where we will liberate the captive, comfort the afflicted, restore what has been ruined, and let justice roll down like waters, peace like an ever-flowing stream. Amen.